Are we heading towards $960,000 Bitcoin, or the market collapse to 69,000? Let's explore. Today we're going to look at the Bitcoin 4-year cycle and take a look at some predictions when it comes to potential pricing. And also, I am not good at math, so you're going to see some pretty basic, probably grade school level math and some interesting charts to check out, but we're going to figure out a way to take a look at what the market could do here today. So to start, I'm going to pop in between screens here, so bear with me, but we're going to take a look at what the Bitcoin 4-year cycle is. Then we're going to look at the Bitcoin power law and what that tells us about potential pricing. And we're even going to get into a little bit of MSTR, MicroStrategy, and how the Bitcoin price could play out for them as well. So this is going to take us on a journey to a few different places, so bear with me here. So, okay, to start, what we're looking at here is the Bitcoin 4-year cycle, the halvings. So every 4 years, Bitcoin, the amount of Bitcoin that's mined every 10 minutes, as you can see here, originally started with 50 Bitcoin for every 10 minutes. And there's a lot of coding and stuff that goes into that when it comes to difficulty levels and et cetera. But just know they can scale it up based on hash rate and how many people are on the network to ultimately get it to a point that it stays pretty consistent for those 4 years at 50 Bitcoin being mined every 10 minutes. And as you can see here, that's 10.5 million Bitcoin in circulation in that first 4 years. So almost, like it is half of it, right? So that's kind of interesting. Then it's going to go down. So you can see here it gets cut in half, the supply for the next 4 years. And what's going to happen is that's like saying somebody they're just going to stop selling half of the amount of houses that are on the market. Well, the houses that are on the market, the price is going to go up, right? So what you're going to see is you're going to see this lag of about 12 months after the halving, the pricing really starts to go up and we start to hit all-time highs. And you can see the pattern here, right? Price goes up, we have a halving, and then all of a sudden, you can see about a year later, we're up there, and then it gradually comes down. Good time to accumulate. Another halving, and you can just see this pattern has been pretty consistent over the last 4 years. Okay. Let me pop over here, and this is just another way to see it, right? So and you can just see the halving cycles as well. That's going to play into the discussion that we're going to have today. So then the question becomes, well, what could the potential price look like for Bitcoin and other assets as well, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you this real basic kind of chart I got going here. And what we did is we took a look at each of the years, what the approximate all-time high was, approximate, right? And as you can see here, November of 2013, 1,200, December 2017, about 20 grand, and then about 69,000, November 21st. These are directionally correct. Maybe they're not exactly on the dollar, but you get the gist, okay? Now, what we can then do is if we follow this cycle of the timing, you can see a pattern here. Right around the end of the year is when we look at when those all-time highs are happening, right? That's interesting data point. Now, respected to when does then, so if we look at that, what also happens is as there's a peak, we're going to come back down, the price is going to come back down, okay? Now, what you're going to find is that usually, if you look at all of these, the all-time low, I'm calling all-time low, it's not the all-time low, but the low for that current cycle, right, occurs approximately 12 to 13 months afterwards, okay? So you can see here is the high, here is the low, etc. And you can see January, December, November. So maybe we're looking at October of 26 for this upcoming year, but you get the gist. Now, to go one step further, because there's a lot of patterns going on here, right? So what you're going to notice is that the all-time high has typically created right around that, not exactly perfectly, but has created the floor for the next cycle, okay? So for this one in particular, what we're taking a look at is here, and this is pretty small, but you can see here, this was the previous all-time high, okay? And guess what? the cycle went up in the next 4 years, and then it came down, but it did not go below the previous high. So that previous all-time high created the next floor for the next cycle. Let's see if it plays out again. Okay, so we get to about 20, and I'm giving us a little leeway because right around here is when FTX, all that stuff went down. We did dip below the previous all-time high. I get that, but also FTX was kind of a crazy time. But ironically, it's pretty close to what it is, right? So now we've got this all-time high that was around that 19, 20,000, and our all-time low was around 16. I'd say that's close enough, right, to say that this is about the floor, which is kind of interesting, right? So now, if the previous all-time high was at 69,000 for the past cycle, guess what likely would be our floor for the upcoming cycle? $69,000. Are we going to get there? I don't know. Are the cycles going to continue on the exact same path and trajectory? Nobody knows, right? Just because past performance is not indicative of future performance, but there seems to be a pattern, okay? So I don't want to deny that fact, okay? So let's take a look at this. The pattern suggests Bitcoin often reaches an all-time high within 12 to 18 months following the halving event. So you can see here the halving event and then an all-time high that follows, right? Okay, well, if we apply that to the current cycle that we're in, we had it was on 4/20, 2024 is when we had the halving. So let's run this out, and we're going to give a range of 12 to 18 months. So that's anywhere from April to October of 25. Do I feel personally, based on a lot of the game theory that's going on with companies like, obviously MicroStrategy is making their Bitcoin plays, but they're sharing that playbook with organizations like Microsoft, right? And some of these big players, and if they get in, then other companies are going to start getting in, and we're looking at countries and the United States putting a Bitcoin reserve, and all that feeds into the flywheel and the FOMO. So I see us peaking in all-time high and then heading down after April 2025? I personally don't. And if it plays out like any of the other cycles, we probably have about another 10 to 11 months ahead of us if this plays all the way out until October of 2025. Okay? So let's just work off of that assumption that the cycle is going to be similar. I mean, people are saying we're done with the cycles, we're in this thing. I still think that everything gets oversaturated, it gets corrected, but ultimately it's your friend is the trend, and the trend's saying we're on an upward trajectory, right? Even with this volatility. So whatever, you guys get the gist. So now let's go ahead and take a look at the April. Actually, I'm sorry. Let's take a look here at kind of bounce around the Bitcoin power law. Okay, so if we go ahead and we say that this is going to run until, let's say, what do we say? October of 25. So the Bitcoin power law, you can see here, shows the support level and the resistance level, and then this linear regression fit for the price. And you can see here, going back, been pretty darn accurate. You can see we've gone above, but typically it's been pretty accurate for the most part, right? So let's just assume this plays out again. So if we look at October of 25, let's go there. Okay, so October 25 says linear regression is 133, but at the same time, let's take a look at these peaks. The peaks have always been above the line of linear regression. You can see that going back through all these circumstances. And if we go ahead and we look at this one here, let's go to this one. So it was 100,000, 63,000. Didn't quite reach the top resistance level. It got to about 63% of the way there. Let's just say in this instance, we go even, let's just be conservative. Instead of 63%, let's say it's 60% or even 55%. Okay, let's just do that. So if we take a look at October 485, okay. So if we go to 485, and I'm just gonna pull this up here. We'll just do some quick math. All right, so 485, right? 1,000 times what? 0.55. Now you're at $265,000, right? And if it was the same as last time, 0.63 times 485, I mean, you're at 305,000. So you're between 265 to 300,000. Okay, that's kind of where I could see this going as the peak. Now the question then comes: all right, well, when is we going to look at when it bottoms out? You can see it always bottoms out here. Well, this is where it gets interesting. Okay, is that if we go and we follow this and we say November of 26, okay? All right, interesting. November of 26. Let's go look at the date. Keep in mind what we said earlier is that typically the previous all-time high becomes the floor of the next cycle. So if the all-time high was around 69,000, we can see here, what does it say? It would mean that around November 26 would make sense that this would be about $69,000, okay? Let's see if that's accurate. All right, so if we go to November of 26, October, November, right around here. Look at that, 68,263 is what it is saying. So it's about 69,000. Let's go back. 60. I mean, guys, come on. That's interesting. All right, so if this continues to play out, we're looking at an upside of 2.5, maybe 3x where we are today, and then we're going to come down to about 69,000, and then guess what? Whatever the previous all-time high was created the next floor. So now in the following cycle, we could be looking at a floor of around $250,000 to $300,000. If you're willing to wait 6, 8, 10 years, probably this $100,000 price we're at right now isn't all that shabby, I would say. Okay, so then I just talked about that floor of 292. Okay, so let's say we're going to follow that trend, right, into the same number of months out. Let's just say we're between that 250 and 300. The floor is now in December of 23. Let's go take a look. December of 2023 is 2030. What is it? 2031. Okay, December 2031. Where are we at? December of 31. Right there. All right. Now we are at that 297, the 300. So that's kind of interesting, right? This is all kind of playing out if it follows those. And then an all-time high, I've got a projection of about 960,000 in 2030. I'm going to say just shy of $1 million. I don't know why. I know everybody wants it to be over $1 million, but I'm going to say just shy because I feel like there's going to be a lot of sell pressure right as we start getting to that $1 million, just like we got a lot of sell pressure right now at 100,000. Okay. Now, here's another way to look at this. I mean, again, this is all like grade school math. This is just a guy who doesn't know what he's doing, trying to figure life out. So if we look at these peaks and valleys, okay, of where the drop came from the all-time high back to the next the low for the previous cycle, for the cycle, it was 85%, 83%, 77%. So if we follow that trajectory downwards, okay, the 2025 cycle, we should be at about 74% drop in price. So let's work this backwards. If we know that the floor, but we assume the floor is 69,000, in order to drop that 74%, we're back at that all-time high of 265. So we've backed into these numbers a few different ways, right? One of them is looking at the Bitcoin power law and the cycle of when we think the all-time high is and mapping that out. Checked out. Now what we're doing is we're not looking at that at all, right? We're not looking at the Bitcoin power law at all at this point. Now what we're saying is based on the historical trends from a drop from the high to the low, what is realistic if we have the most confidence of knowing what the low is. We don't have the same confidence in knowing what the high is, but we have more confidence on knowing what the low is based on this information. So then we can back into it. In order for there to be a 74% drop back down to this $69,000 mark, it has to be around 265. So we've checked it out a couple different ways. Okay, so now we're around that 265, 300 is the peak in the next 10 or 11 months. And then we're back down to 69,000 if this plays out historically, okay? So then the next question comes, what is, when we look at MSTR, MicroStrategy, that's another way to invest. let's take a look at that. And this is me, again, not good at math, just trying to figure life out. I'm going to give you the bull case and the bear case for MicroStrategy with some rough assumptions, okay? So for MicroStrategy, the way that their price plays out is how much Bitcoin they have, what is the price of Bitcoin, and what is the premium on net asset value, gets us to how they're typically valued, divided by the number of obviously shares they have. So right now, MicroStrategy owns close to 2% of the Bitcoin at 402,100. This is as of about December, first few days of December. Now, let's say that the Bitcoin price plays out as we discussed. Let's just say it's about $300,000 towards the end of 2025. Now, I'm trying to keep the math as simple as possible. So, and I don't know how many more Bitcoin they're going to buy and what frequency. They're going to buy 42 billion, they say. But I don't know the frequency or when those are going to come into effect. So I'm just going to say, should they not purchase any more, how might this get valued at, right? And so 300,000 times 402,000 Bitcoin is 120 billion. Right now there's 216 million shares outstanding. So at a net asset value of one, we're looking at $558 per share. Now here's where things get interesting, is typically it has operated at a premium. So I just threw in 2, 3, and 4 as those premiums, because if we go to MSTR tracker, okay, what you're going to see is this is the historical data, and I ran this out so that we could see what 300,000 might look like. But if you look at this data, let me slide this over here. There you go. If you look at this data on the sheet, what you're going to see is that it has typically stayed right around this range of, let's just say, 2.25. However, you can see that we've been below that and we've been above it, and in the most bullish of cases, it's gone all the way up to about 6. I'm not saying that we're going to get there. This chart says that we will, but I just want to take something a little conservative and say, let's say we go 2, 3, and 4 multiple, or premium, I should say. And where does that get us, right? Now that's conservative. So if we come back at a 2 NAV premium of 2, that is 1,100. At 3, that's 1,600, and 4 is 2,200. So that's 300, 450, and 600% gain over the current price today. I just grabbed it and it was about 375. Okay, so substantial upside. Now the argument against MicroStrategy, right, is, well, what if let's say the baseline decision is just to go, why don't you just buy Bitcoin, right? It's not leverage, but let's just buy Bitcoin. So if we're currently at a price of 95,000, okay, and then we go up to that 300,000, that's about just over 300% gain, okay? That's what, if this all plays out right here, this 300K. So then the question comes, do you believe that the NAV premium will be greater than 2? If so, it's pretty substantial upside, right? If not, I mean, if we're at a at net asset value, which I don't, because they are creating new solutions to the market, like these the bonds, the convertible bonds. That's something new and accretive, and it's very interesting because you've limited the downside and you've got all the upside. So that's very interesting. I think it does deserve a premium. I just don't know what that premium is. So here gives you an idea of how that might play out. But if we look at this MSTR tracker, what they've done is they've ran some lines across here, and it gets interesting because here, let me refresh this, because if this plays out like they say, okay, let me scroll down. Let me roll this out to 300,000 so we can actually see what that might look like. They've ran some statistics and said what they believe the premium should be. Okay, so let me pull this. Whoops. I gotta pull this over from a different screen so you can actually see what's going on here. Okay, so let's get this so we can see the 300K on the screen. 300K, right there. Okay, if it does go to the 300K like we're predicting, what they're saying is that the NAV premium could go as high as 15x at 7,700 a share. Okay, that seems a little aggressive. Let's go here. Another regression line here. 5,000, okay, with a 10x premium. And let's just buckle it down to that 2.3x, which is where we've been typically operating, 1,200. That's still pretty substantial. So I'm going to go with these base cases here. If this were to play out, that is something to take into mind because those NAV premiums could get real crazy, okay? Now, let's go to the bear case because on a leveraged Bitcoin play, yes, as Bitcoin's price goes up, the price of the premium and everything is going to be substantial. Now, it can also come back down just as aggressively, okay? So let's go to the bear case. Let's say that the bear case is 69,000. Well, that's interesting because what we're going to do is to fund its 2024 purchase of 55,000. What I did is that MicroStrategy sold 5.6 million shares with a share dilution of about 100 shares per BTC. Okay, this is just me just doing some rough math. That could be totally wrong, possibly, but whatever. As of December 2024, MicroStrategy purchased Bitcoin at 58.3, which is still gaining for this is what I want to do. I said, let's say after deploying 42 billion that they said they're going to do, this could double their stack from 400 to 800,000. This is just me just saying, okay, if the price goes up, they're going to be able to buy. That'll affect their basis, all that kind of stuff. This is just me making hypothetical numbers up, right? But by November of 2026, let's just go there, because that is when this bear market will take effect. So we want to know what the bear case is. And let's just say they've been able to acquire an additional 175K of BTC by then. So then at that, and this is just assuming that these are all equally spaced out and etc. Who knows? Maybe they're going to buy a whole bunch more and not equally space them out and whatever. I don't know. But this is just hypothetical if they were to evenly space it out between now and then, and what the assumed price is going to be. A lot of assumptions. Way too many assumptions for this to be worth anything other than a thought experiment. But what we're going to look at is the stack is now 575K. They're going to add about 17.5 million shares. Double check on my math because I'm bad at math. And this is a big math equation. What that means is that at the 575,000 Bitcoin at 69,000 a coin is $40 billion across these many shares, is $171 a share at net asset value, right? Here's the thing. If you got in under 170 shares or in the hundreds, let's just say, maybe it's worth holding on to this thing. Again, none of this is financial advice. Maybe it's worth holding on to this thing because you figured out what your floor is, and if your basis is below the floor, and we know that the next peak is going to be close to $1 million, maybe just let that ride. Here's the thing. If you believe that it'll be a 2x NAV, well, now you're kind of back to break even, right? Because 171 times 2 is 340 something, and we're right around 375. Okay, all right. That's not bad with all that potential upside, right? Now, is this going to be price discovery in the process? I believe so. Not just price discovery of Bitcoin, but price discovery of what the premium should actually be. And what if it's 3 or 4? I don't know. Then this looks still pretty attractive from that standpoint. And then keep in mind, a lot of these convertible bonds are 5 years out. So you actually have to look at the next cycle. And that plays into it as well, because those prices are just going to be even higher. So it makes sense from the bond standpoint. So anyway, let's do a quick recap, because that was kind of just mumbo jumbo looking at a bunch of different charts. At the end of the day, what we've realized or taken a look at is that if the historical trends continue to operate like we've seen based on the 4-year cycle, we can expect a all-time high between April and October. I'm giving a price prediction of $265,000 to $300,000. is where that may land. And then 12 to 13 months after that, around November of 26, is when we could likely bottom out around 69,000. And we might chop around sideways for a while. That could happen. But hopefully we don't go below that 69,000. So anytime that your cost basis is below 69,000 over the next however many years, you're going to be A-okay, right? And even if you get in at 100,000 now, guess what? You got 3x to the upside coming your way as well. So all positive things. And again, last recap is really the main takeaway is, can the Bitcoin cycle maintain the floor at 69,000? And we backed into the overall price prediction of 265 a few different ways, not just based on the Bitcoin power law, but also taking a look at what the historical drops have been as well. It was probably a whole bunch of mumbo jumbo and probably maybe not the easiest to follow. But those are some random thoughts from a guy who wanted to dive into a bunch of charts, do some second grade math, and make some bold predictions that you should base no financial advice on, and just have a little bit of entertainment. So if you guys found this interesting in any capacity, go ahead and hit that like button below. Subscribe, and we'll keep throwing out some intriguing data, and keep an eye on this very exciting Bitcoin cycle that we're about to really get rolling. I'm calling that once we cross over that 100K, things could get real interesting real quick because there's a lot of sell pressure at 100. Once we get above it, the brakes could be released and things could go up dramatically. We're obviously going to have pullbacks along the way. Get ready for 20 to 30% pullbacks, but could be a pretty entertaining go. All right. Thank you.